Okay, the wrestling documentary The Backyard. They mention Rob Van Dam's in it, and he is. For maybe like 2 minutes. It seems like someone did an interview with Rob Van Dam, asked some questions about backyard wrestling, and then put a documentary around it. A lot of this does deal with, some of the different areas and their backyard wrestling. For the most part, it's always hardcore wrestling. Few people do deathmatch wrestling. Deathmatch wrestling is, of course, where people do every match has something wrapped in barbed wire, real barbed wire, tips not bent, thumbtacks, because, if you're afraid to fall into a thumbtack, let's be honest. One guy actually puts it like this. If you're afraid of a thumbtack, he's holding it, point, sticking straight up. If you're afraid of this, man, you're a pussy. You must be afraid to get like a splinter or something. So I don't know if he's entirely confused about the fact that if I get powerbombed onto a piece of sheet metal covered in thumbtacks, it's not the spike part that people get scared. You can pull that up pretty easily. It's the fact that when you bounce on a ring, they don't all land point up. Some of them land like this. And then you get the large circular portion, which can cut you pretty deeply. It's pretty sized lacerations. So a lot of it is just, there's a group in Arizona where it's two brothers who fight each other, essentially in a desert backyard where the ring is like 2x4s and barbed wire. They actually have an ongoing story where the younger brother was always beaten up by, his older brother and his mother. So then they do their Stages of Hell Death Match 2, which involves like a buried alive match, and then at the end, putting your opponent through a piece of plywood wrapped in barbed wire that's on fire, and I think below it is light tubes. So you have a pit in the ground with a flaming piece of plywood wrapped in barbed wire with light tubes underneath it. Then you have another group that does what they call deathmatch wrestling. That's the stuff where it's like, you know what? You're not awesome until you use the brick wrapped in barbed wire. And it's a brick. It's part of a patio block. And like a triangle shape, wrapped in barbed wire. Those are the people who set everybody on fire almost every single match. And I mean set on fire. They threw alcohol on a kid, like alcohol, on his face too, lit him on fire. He threw his shirt off, and his skin was on fire. But that's what's cool, that's what's awesome. And of course, normally the parents are for it because you've been doing so much worse things. I'm sorry, but when you see one kid and he's got scars all over his face, one looks like it's like a 1/4 inch deep laceration in his skull. Yeah, because when you try to get a job later on in life, and you've just got scars all over your arms and all over your chest and all over your face, how'd you get those? When I was like 15, a buddy took a ladder wrapped in barbed wire, grated across my face like blood like a stuffed pig. Yeah, that's great. So your dream of going into the WWF, this is around the time of Tough Enough 2, so it's kind of dated in that aspect. You thought Vince wanted to hire somebody covered in scars? I can't take anything away. These kids are ridiculously tough for doing this. But if all of them keep on saying, how the East sucks, and, when he goes over to England to do part of it, they're like, oh, we try to do more technically sound matches. I'm thinking, okay, good. I've seen backyard wrestling where they actually try to, work out matches and do ring psychology. Where there are no frying pans. It's not essentially in a white trash neighborhood. I mean, it looks like it's done well. They have a ring that's somewhat actually built with covered ropes so you don't get burns on your body. They actually, a high risk move is used as a finisher, not as a setup move to do another more insane over the top high risk move. So the kids who do it in England, they talk, oh yes, more technically refined because everything's better than WWF. Like it's got the Marca Corner. And actually at this time, now it does. I think great, technically refined, looking forward to seeing this. They try to do something like reversals, alright, cool. Now they're falling off ladders, hitting each other with yield signs, doing like acrobatic moves off of plastic doors. Okay, so to be more technically sound and savvy, You guys are still blading each other and trying to use like flaming kendo sticks to hit each other. Yep. Ridiculously technically refined. But the bulk of it actually deals with a guy named The Lizard, who is a backyard wrestler who actually makes it to the initial 250-person casting call for Tough Enough 2. Not bad. The guy looks kind of like Dog the Bounty Hunter. Yeah, so picture a younger version of Dog the Bounty Hunter. That's what this guy looks like. He finally actually gets his big break. He goes to an actual wrestling school, which is great. Which is normally, if you wanted to get into the wrestling business, a wrestling school is kind of a must. Because you think, oh, well, you know, the Hardys did it and Foley did it. Somewhat, yeah, but they still had to be actually trained how to do it. As weird as that sounds, if you pick like 3 people out of several thousand, I could be like that. No, you're not. There are people who are awesome in Ring of Honor who'll probably never make it to WWE or TNA. But he goes to a wrestling school, and he actually ends up going and having like his actual first debut match. That's in a gauntlet, and he gets, you know, essentially he gets screwed out of a pin, but at least he got to say he actually wrestled a match. It's a unique documentary. It is very much dated for its time. You know, from a backyard perspective, there are a lot of other ones like the Backyard Wrestling DVDs that were really huge in like the early 2000s. It is kind of interesting, you know, they actually have a high school that really actually is, they let them do advertisements and all that, but they do more of kind of like more wrestling for like fun. You know, they don't, you know, it's a lot more like, oh no, it's a flaming chicken. The chicken goes out by the time he hits the guy. A flaming rubber chicken, okay. You know, but they're ridiculously safe. Like a guy gets like the back of his skull cut open, and they stop. They stop. They're like, show's over, we're done. You know, they actually, you know, they try to like patch him up and all that. And I was like, wow, someone got injured, and everyone stopped. You know, show's over, we're done. And I was like, okay, that's good. You actually, you know that if someone actually bleeds, because no one bleeds in their thing. They like to, you know, they show up, they're kind of sore, but that's it. Because even the kid who did it was like, you know, scars on your face, you'll never get a good job later on in life. It's interesting. You got like the 4 or 5 different little groups that are going over. It's not bad. It's a unique documentary. If you want to see, I hate to say if you want to see the mainstream media version of wrestling fans, you know, where they are essentially fighting on a sidewalk, lighting each other on fire, hitting each other with baseball bats and stuff like that. If you want to see like that's the mainstream media version of wrestling fans. If you want to see that, it's interesting. You know, some actually tried to do like entrepreneurship, actually tried to make what they do more of an art form, try to make money off of it. The smartest one is a guy who's like 17. He wants everyone to start signing waivers, so he's not legally responsible for anything that happens. And I was like, wow, that's really good. If it happens, they fight essentially like a playground. There's no ring. It's like, you know, 2x4 stuck in the ground with like hemp rope around them. That's his ring. But he's called, and I quote, the Vince McMahon of backyard wrestling. And that's the backyard. It's interesting. And if you're a wrestling fan, you watch some of the older documentaries, this one is actually somewhat interesting. It actually does give you a little bit of how you go from being a fan to at least being someone who wrestles in the ring.